What's up, guys? Welcome back to Texas Young Guns. Today, well, more repairs. Basically, we're going down the road on our way to Louisiana, ultimately going through Mississippi, Alabama to our Talladega video if you watched, and we heard a huge rattle on top of the RV. Long story short, or long story long, this guy was flopping around everywhere, making lots of racket, and was literally only being held on by this wire, the only thing that was left. So using my redneck ingenuity, I quickly cut the wire, brought it down, and covered the hole up with duct tape. But now we're at the point where it's time to replace it. Luckily, these antennas aren't that expensive, so we got it with Amazon in a few days because, well, let's just face it, with Corona, they're not really doing too good on their 2-day. But hey, it's still pretty quick. Not gonna complain. And yeah, we're basically just gonna replace it today. So to be honest with you, we don't really use our antenna too often, so we figured we're not really gonna spend the money to upgrade. Essentially, this is just a newer version of what we had, almost identical, just maybe a little newer. And so we have the antenna, and then of course it has the signal finder, which we're all gonna have to replace today. So let's get to it. So the first thing I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna take off the bottom plate. The antenna goes through the roof and ultimately attaches to this base plate. It's not really holding it on the roof. It's just, they're just linked together that way. So most of what's holding the antenna on the roof is the screws and of course the die core. But we probably need to take the base plate off before we go to the top and take off what's left of the antenna. Alright, so this is a little knob that you kind of turn to find signal, but what's alarming is looking inside of it, there's some water. I don't know how well you can see that. So that's a little alarming. I guess we'll need to go up there and make sure that we seal it good on this new one. But that square knob right there pretty much comes down from the base of the antenna. So, alright, so it looks like this just kind of peels off. Guess that knob was holding it on. Or maybe it just pops on there. Either way, this is what we're left with. And now we're going to take these screws out that hold this base plate on there. So it looks like this piece, the part where the antenna hooked onto, I went ahead and unhooked it. It looks like it's just pressure fitted up in there. So that's interesting. I guess that makes sense because this is the only piece that needs to know where the antenna is pointing and what kind of signal it's getting. We're going to keep it in good shape, keep it around in case something goes out, and we'll have a spare. And then there's one last screw hiding under there. Alright, so now we're going to pop the base plate off, and don't be surprised if it's not a little sticky to the roof because it's been there probably for years. And there's the base, which is probably not normally supposed to fall out from there. But as you can see, it's sheared off from what used to be the antenna. So yep, if I were to look up right now, you'd probably see daylight if I didn't have it duct taped, but ultimately this is the bottom part of the antenna. Yeah, so here's the piece I just took down. As you can see, this piece here matches up, so yep. Alright, so here's the new King antenna. You can see it also has the similar piece, and it also has the cable, and that's the same cable that will be hanging down there like that one is. That will ultimately hook up. So we'll need to get this to the roof. Also, that comes in the box. Let's see if we can get it out here. Looks like a arm extension. It also looks like your signal finders in there, and then of course the base plate. So like I said, we're just replacing what we have. Excuse the AC noise, but as you can see, the new one is almost identical to the old one, maybe some slight design changes. Like obviously this is different than the old fatter one, so that must be for a reason. But let's get this installed. We'll probably have to go up top now. So one last thing to note is I was reading the instructions, and it says that this extension is only to be used if your roof is thicker than 4 to 8 inches. So I won't need to use this, but you might. Alright, so time to get on the roof. Remember a tip I've given before, but I'll say it again. Do not make multiple trips up and down the ladder. Use a bucket or something like that to carry all your tools, and carry more than what you think you're gonna need, because more than likely you're gonna need something that you didn't even think of. All right, so we have made it to the roof, and this is what's left of our base of the original local channel receiver. So our goal here is to take this guy off and replace it with the new one. So that's gonna mean that we need to cut the old sealant off. The only bad thing is I don't really know what the base looks like, so I don't know where I need to cut, but I guess we can figure that out with a knife. And then one quick tip, once you know what you're dealing with, instead of having to cut the sealant with a knife, this guy right here is a fantastic tool for cutting die-core. You do need to be careful because it will cut through your rubber roof, but if you cut high and then use your knife for the rest, it makes it so much easier. But I'm gonna warn you again, you need to be careful. Okay, so as you can see, I've found the edge of the base of the satellite, and so I'm going to continue using the knife. I'm going to work myself around, get all the edge off, and then I'm going to really try to get in there and expose the screw holes. That way I can get the screws out that's holding this base on, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so like I said, I'm going to warn you one last time, if you're not comfortable in using this and not sure what's going on with your roof, do not use this. So this is a battery powered reciprocating saw, I think that's what you call it. Anyways, I currently have a round blade on it. As you can see, I've used it on die-core in the past. So now that I kind of know what's going on with the shape of the base is, I'm going to run it around at a very shallow level. That way I'm not cutting my roof, because my particular roof is, I think they call it TPO, or basically it's a rubber roof. So I do not want to damage the membrane, and also my new roof coating job. So although it looks dirty right now with all the trees falling on it, but anyways, I'll show you how quick it is, but like I said, be careful. So here we go. As you can see, it gets the die-core right off of there. You can also see that I'm doing a shallow cut, that way I'm not damaging my roof, and I really just want to be able to get to the base to get the base off, and then once I have the base off, I can really see where the hump of the old die-core is to remove it. So I'll continue with this and I'll come back when I'm done. Alright, as you can see, I've made a pretty clean cut around the base. You can really see the edges of the base here. So I'm now going to try to locate each screw and try to remove them. So I've gotten all the screws out. It might take some prying, but they should come right off. And it does. So now you'll want to be careful because you don't want to just yank it off, as you see I almost just did, because you do have your coax that goes into the coach. And then of course you have your wire that I mentioned earlier that will go into the coach that you'll hook up to your base there. So let's unhook these and we'll start preparing for the new one. You notice that your connector, which is the same in the new one, has 2 outs and 1 in. So obviously your in is actually hooked up to your antenna, and your 2 outs, one will be to the coach, so this will be run your TV, and the other out obviously is to your basically your signal. So this basically goes into your base where the signal indicator is, and that way you know how much signal you're getting. So now that we have the base off, let's start prepping the surface. We'll need to remove a lot of this die-core that's causing big humps and what have you, and that way we can create a flat surface for the new base to go onto. I am noticing on my roof that there's big humps, so I'm kind of scared to know what's under there. I'm wondering if maybe the previous owner you know, damaged the roof or something, and so they have big hunks of sealant to cover up those mistakes. So anyways, we're gonna flatten this down. I'm gonna use a combination of my knife and my tool here, being careful not to damage the roof. I'll probably do most of it with my knife just to be safe, but let's start flattening it out. Yeah, so I think the previous owner must have done some damage with this thing whenever he was installing it. You can see how there's chunks of roof missing where the edge of my blade is, and I'm scared that that's what's happening under this patch. So we'll make sure we seal this off really well The good news is that the plywood that I can see underneath where this jack is, it looks fairly dry, so that's good news. And now would also be a good opportunity to measure this thickness of your roof again, to help you determine if you need that extension or not. So just to confirm yourself, now that you have a clear open view, go ahead and do another measurement. Measure twice and do it once, right? So I've gotten the surface pretty flat. I don't know how well you can see that in the video, but the surface is very flat. I'm pretty happy with it. The only thing I am worried about is you notice that this old one is like a diamond shape. This one is more like a, I don't know, a tripod. So hopefully it covers over the same area. If not, I'm gonna have to get creative with some Dicor and some actual sealant itself as well. Come back up and make sure the roof is adequately coated. So let's see what's going on here. Something else to note when you're installing this is the instructions. There's a channel in case your coax has to run out onto the roof. That is supposed to face towards the rear. So in other words, this point will go towards the front, the opening will face towards the rear. Also on the base, you'll see that the antenna is already hooked up, and also the out cable, this one right here, is already hooked up, which is dangling right now. And so all we need to do is hook up the one for the coach, and we will of course hook that up to the out position right here. One other thing to note, if you look at the bottom of this, you'll notice that there's channels. In the instructions it tells you to put sealant in these channels. Just be careful because you don't want any sealant touching the base parts, because these parts rotate. So the instruction talks about that also, but you do want to fill in these channels with sealant before you put it onto the top of the RV. Also, you might need a second person, like I'm getting Lana to come out here, to make sure that this stem right here goes in the middle of the hole that you have in your roof, where your satellite's going to go into. So we have the Dicor all set up. The end is cut. I didn't cut it very wide because I want it to be able to fit in the channels, but it's all set up, so let's get it pumping. And like I mentioned earlier, you just fill up these channels, which is going to be kind of difficult, but just go slow. Alright, as you can see, I have sealed it, and actually you can see a lot of the seal starting to ooze out on the edges, so that's good. I got a healthy seal on there. So now it's time to put the screws in. One thing you can do before you put the screws in is take dabs of, like for instance, this Dicor that ran out over here. Take it, fill in the screw like so. You can put it in the hole, and that just kind of seals up the screw hole as well. So I'm going to screw in these screws now. Alright, and you can see that some more oozed out over here as I was doing it, so that's a good sign. So all 6 screws are in. Something else the instructions states is to make sure that the channel, if you're not using it for the coax, is sealed as well. So I'll just put a little bump of there you go. So that's sealed now, and then I'm also going to run a bead now with this, and I'm not sponsored by Dicor, but I do like this stuff, this self-leveling sealer, and that'll make a nice perimeter around this. It's too bad they don't make this in black, or maybe they do. If they do, give me a link down below. I'll be sure to look at it, because the black would be nice to match with the actual antenna, although the roof is white, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Alright, so I'm going to start with a good base layer. Dicor around the edges. And do not skimp out on this stuff. You cannot put too much. And take your time too. You don't, this is not a quick process. If you're rushing through it, you'll regret it later. You really want to get your roof sealed up. So as you can see, it's a nice base layer of that lap sealant and the self-leveling, and eventually the sealant will flatten out a bit, quite a bit actually, but we still have the matter of these screw holes. So I'm going to put a layer of sealant on top of the screw holes to kind of help better seal them. Okay, so I just got done putting it on, so it will actually even flatten out more than this. But I do have 2 layers of sealant on there, so that should be good for now. Like I said, this part right here where you can see the old base was, I'm going to come back with some roof sealant. If you want to see how to do the roof sealant, go watch my roofing video, which I'll link down below. So make sure you check that out. And with that being said, let's get off the roof and go back down. Alright, so we are back on the inside. Now this centerpiece that you were supposed to make sure that was in the center, as you can see I did, actually extends up and down, which will come into play when it's time to attach the base. Alright, you can see that I put the cable in the back loop. The center stick has a ring on it, so if you can see it, it's got a little ring right there, and that ring will push up against the ring on the base here. Don't worry if it's not exact, because you can pull this down, the centerpiece that is, and then push the base against it. There we go. And then you'll screw it in. Alright, so everything's screwed in, as you can see. Last step will be to put this in, or I say last step, there's a couple more I guess after this, but it's certainly one of the last steps. So it's hard to do this with one hand, but you get the idea. So basically screw in your input to your signal meter here. Okay, so our cable's in, and the last thing you want to do before you put the base on is to, now that you have everything hooked up, to make sure it works. So let's turn ours on. Oop, wrong way. There we go. Looks like it's working. Now we're not getting any signal, but let me see. Maybe if I turn it, oh, there we go. We're starting to get signal. So here we are back on. This should just snap into place. And it does. So there we go. And then the very last thing, I know I've said the last thing a few times now, but now we'll put the knob on. So here's a new knob, and you'll notice on the inside here that there's a groove on one of the sides. That groove lines up. If you look at the stem, there's a little piece sticking out right there, and so that groove goes through there, and really this can only go on one way, so you can't screw it up. But essentially you'll put it on, depress the button so it'll go in all the way. That arrow tells you which way it's pointing, that's why it can only go in one way, and put the screw in. Alright, that's the finished product. On the inside I got it screwed in. I've tested that it makes sure it goes full 360. Remember, you have to push this button in. There's a gear on the inside that stops it from turning if you don't have that button depressed. Looks like it's rotating freely. We've already tested the power, so there it is. The power is working. And I also put the sticker on. They give you a sticker to kind of remind you about the power button, the attenuator, etc. You don't have to put that on, but I did. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. That's it. Wasn't too bad, right? Pretty easy. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure you hit that like button. That really helps us out a lot. Helps us out a great deal, actually. If you like our videos, hit the subscribe. We do how-to videos like this. We also do trips and reviews, tech reviews. We do everything RV and traveling, mostly oriented towards traveling. So like I said, if you like that, please like and subscribe, share it with your friends and family, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.